Greetings everybody, welcome to Macro Talk 2. It is Thursday, sometime in October. Hope everybody's doing well. It's nice again here. I don't know what that means. Probably means it's going to be an extra harsh winter, I don't know. Today we're talking about lenses. We're picking up where we left off on Tuesday, but I'll get to that in just a second. It's a difficult topic actually to cover, and I'll explain why. We're talking about affordable lenses today, and that is a very subjective proposition. Anyway, today's links, if you have any interest in any of the lenses that I talk about, want to know more about them or anything like that, on my website, www.alanwallsphotography.com/blog/lenses, that's the name of the blog entry. It'll take you to the article. At the end of the article is a big long list of all the lenses I'm getting ready to talk about, plus links, plus prices and some other things like that, notes. So if you want to look them up, do that. I didn't bother putting the links and prices for the lenses I talked about on Tuesday. It was too expensive to write them down. Anyway, this Saturday, 10 o'clock in the morning until 11:30, we have After Stack with Bud Perrott. Not exactly sure what we're doing this week, but I'm sure it will be educational and very enjoyable. Welcome to Anita, who is joining us for the first time, and Thomas. I may just have missed your name in the past, Thomas, but if you're new, welcome, glad you made it. And anybody else who's here for the first time, or I haven't noticed in the past, welcome. Yeah, you're always welcome. It's a good group, as several people have already said. We're some really smart people in the audience, and no smart people on this end, but you've got to start somewhere. And it's always great to see new people. I hope you get what you're looking for here. We're working on a really interesting project, by the way. I don't know if you're new to macro photography, but I have some 800 hours of content on the internet, and it's hard to find what you're looking for. But a group of volunteers came forward, and they're helping me sort through all the old catalogue, and they're picking out the stuff that they think is most important in various different categories. And when they're through with their work, I'm going to put it all together into a set of playlists with a video to accompany each one that will basically handhold you right through the process from start to finish, so that you can go straight to what you're looking for. If you want to know about focus stacking, there'll be a playlist about that, and I'll tell you which videos cover what, and it'll save you a lot of time. So we're working on that. We were supposed to be meeting today, and if any of the volunteers are in the audience today, I'm sorry, but I actually have to leave today. Right after this show, I'm heading to Wisconsin. Does anybody know where that is, by the way, relative to where I am now? I'm clueless which direction to even drive in. But yeah, that's where I'm going, so I'll be rushing out the door. But we will get together next week and talk, so thank you. A friend of mine shared a picture with me. I belong to a camera club in Seattle, Washington, and I wasn't able to make it to this the meeting this last week. And apparently, I know for a fact I missed some fantastic photography, as I always do when I can't get there. But there was one picture in particular that my friend Rick thought was so fantastic that I'd really want to see it. So he took a screenshot of it. And Klaus, I'm going to embarrass you now because he showed me your oak hopper. And that was, I woke up this morning chuckling, thinking about that photograph. What a fantastic picture. Please leave a note in the chat here to tell people where they can see that picture. I know you've posted it somewhere, but people need to see that. I've looked at many pictures of oak hoppers and taken several of them myself. I have never seen anything like that. What a remarkable picture. Congratulations. All right, I was given some really good ideas for live stream topics in the coming weeks, and it reminded me to remind you that I really do welcome getting your suggestions. If there's something you want to hear about, something you want to talk about, let me know, because I will find a topic in it somewhere. The suggestions I was given were really good. One was polarized light, how we use it in macro photography, polarizing filters, different types, when you use them, when you don't. Another was for tripod heads. We talk a lot about tripods, or we talk some about them, but we've never actually taken a good hard look at the different types of tripod heads, what's good for what in macro, what you need for a monopod, what you need for a tripod, all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to talk about that in the coming weeks. And the third suggestion was to talk about pollinators. Pollinators not only from the photographic perspective, how we photograph pollinators, but also from the conservation standpoint, because there are a lot of organizations around the country and around the world that are very keen on keeping our pollinators safe and healthy, because it's going to make a big difference to the world. So that's going to be something else I talk about. If you have an idea or a suggestion, please put it in the chat. Tell Alistair, email me. Don't email me. I won't get the suggestion until, well, 10 years from now probably, but yeah, get it to me some other way, in a message maybe. And yeah, I encourage your suggestions, and I'll use your ideas. My rig is finished. You will start seeing some new pictures from my studio within the week. True, it's a true fact. Let me see, I recommended 3 books on Tuesday, and I stand by those recommendations, but there's one that's so good I'm going to recommend it again. It's one of the 3 books. This is my favorite photography book, moth book, insect book, macro book so far of the year, possibly of the decade. The pictures in this book are breathtaking, just breathtaking. It's by Andrei Surikov, who Rick knows the person and thinks they're very good, and Rachel Warren Chad are the 2 authors. Get this book. It's not terribly expensive. It's worth 10 times what you'll pay for it. That's a solid recommendation. Okay, I'm almost through. I've ordered some exotic insects, by the way, for this winter, because I know I'm not going to see any outside. So I've got some really cool stuff coming. And I'm going to be doing some live streams on relaxing, cleaning, posing, and shooting, because I'll have the rig all set up and ready to go. That's it. That's everything that I had. Was it everything? It was. Good. Fantastic. I'll throw that piece of paper away. So we're talking about affordable macro lenses today. On Tuesday, we talked about lenses that are not only not really affordable, you can't find them. There are a couple of them that I would buy if I could find, but they're truly exotic and unusual lenses, not made for photography, not made for photographers to be messing with. They're really lenses to be used for a specific task, whether it be reproduction or enlargement or copying prints of films, that type of thing. We talked about all of them and the ones that are really spectacularly good at what they do. And it was fun to talk about them. But today we are going to the other end of the spectrum, both in cost and in applicability to what we do. I often will recommend to anybody who's new to macro photography that the first piece of equipment that you buy should be a good quality, full function macro lens. A macro lens that will take you to 1:1, a macro lens that has autofocus, maybe vibration control too. So a really top of the line lens that does everything that you need, certainly everything that your camera can do. And the reason for that is that when you take pictures with a macro lens, it's quite forgiving. It's a lot more forgiving than it is when you start having to do everything manually and you're just trying to learn. Now, you can do what I did, which was start macro photography with a reversed 50mm prime lens, but it's very hard to use. It's very hard to understand what you're doing, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. You just have to struggle through it. And that is a much cheaper way to go than any of the things most of the things I'm going to be talking about today. But it's not my real recommendation. If you're new, get a macro lens. All of the fancy stuff we do with other kinds of lenses that we repurpose, classic example, microscope objectives, they are all for a specific reason, and that reason is usually higher magnification. And they're difficult to use, they're difficult to get good results with. Everything that we do in macro photography becomes more difficult at magnification, and it's not linear. When you go from 2x to 5x, it's a lot more than twice as hard. It's anybody who's done it will tell you lighting becomes really tricky. So the idea is, when you're starting out, use something that's going to give you loads of room to mess up and still end up with some decent pictures. And for that, a fully automated macro lens is what I recommend. Now, there's a problem here. Fully automated or fully featured macro lenses are expensive. It doesn't matter which brand you buy. The flagship macro lens from every modern camera maker or lens maker is $1,000 or more, or a little less, but around $1,000. So my goal today, when I started out, was to come up with a list of lenses that are on the lower cost end, but give you the same kind of features and perform as well as some of the more expensive ones. And I quickly realized that you really can't do that, because you're not comparing apples to apples with these lenses. There are, for example, many really, really optically excellent lenses that don't have autofocus. They don't have vibration control. And there are really good lenses with vibration control and autofocus that don't go to 2:1. Some of them even stop at 1:2. So you're looking at different kinds of lenses. So rather than put them in any kind of a strict order, what I'm going to do is just go brand by brand down the list of the lenses that I think are worth the money. Now, some of them, I'm going to tell you the prices of all of them as we go, so you've got a frame of reference, and I will certainly make a point of emphasizing those lenses that I think are both very well priced and good performers, and that'll have to do. I mean, putting it in a list might end up suggesting to somebody that they should be getting a manually focusing lens, which is, I differ there from a lot of macro photographers who absolutely, anybody who's been doing this for any amount of time doesn't really use autofocus. It makes it harder. But early on, it's kind of like a safety blanket, and I think it's a good thing to have when you're just getting started. It helps get you close to being in focus so that you can practice fine-tuning with your manual technique. But most of the lenses these days have on-demand manual focus that will override the auto if you touch the focus ring. We'll talk about that as we go. So the things you want to look for when you're buying a lens. This is very important. Look at the focal length, because the focal length of the lens is going to tell you a lot about how comfortable it is going to be for you to shoot with in the field. Presumably, if you're just starting out, you're not starting out to get in the studio and shoot high magnification right off the bat. You'll probably want to do at least some work outside. So the trick outside is to get as far away from your subject as possible. The trick in the studio is to get as close as you can, but for right now, we want lenses that give you the reach of about 100 millimeters or more. That is enough distance for you to get most of the shots without spooking your quarry. If you're lucky enough to have a Canon 180 millimeter or a Nikon 200 or one of the Irix lenses that allow you to stand off even further, that's a big advantage, but they're very hard to shoot handheld. that's a disadvantage. But the focal length is really important. When you see lenses that have focal lengths of 60 millimeters, but they're for full frame cameras, then you're putting yourself in a position where it will be quite difficult to get shots at all, because you're going to be right on top of your subject. These short focal length lenses, like the classic 55 millimeter that Nikon made for a long time, it's a fantastic lens, and I use it in the studio, but I don't use it outdoors. You're just too close to your subject. Now remember that a lot of lenses in the 60 and even lower 40 millimeter range, and some 30, are made for smaller sensor cameras, APS-C sensor size or micro four thirds. When you're shooting with those smaller sensor sizes and using these lenses, you do get a bit more reach because you're not having to fill such a big sensor. So it kind of puts you back in the same ballpark as using a 90 or 100. So you're usually going to be okay, but be careful. There are some full frame lenses that are going to be too short for comfort. Magnification ratio, in the past that pretty much went unspoken, because I mean initially most macro lenses were 1:2, and then as the new technology came in some decades ago, everything went to life size 1:1. But now more and more lens makers are coming out with 2:1, and some of course variable magnification lenses that go way higher than that. Now it's a good time to insert an ad, YouTube is telling me. You can tell them for me that there is no good time to insert an ad. Anyway, the knowing whether or not you're shooting 1:1 or 2:1 when you buy a lens is really important. I must say, as much as I love this lens that I've been using for the last couple of weeks, it is quite difficult for me to accommodate to a 2:1 lens. It really is, because I've always shot 1:1. And it's especially hard for me to go from 1:1 to 2:1 when I'm watching television. Whose ever idea this was to put a widescreen television on the camera has too much time on their hands. It's very good though. I watched Friends on it the other night. So autofocus versus manual is probably one of the big price jump issues. A lot of the really nice lenses that are coming out of China now are manual focus only, and that doesn't bother most people who've been shooting macro for a while. But like I said at the beginning, it might not suit you, and I'll tell you which of the lenses I'm talking about are manual and which are autofocus. Manual lenses are, generally speaking, much more affordable. That's a big part of the cost. Another thing that ramps the cost way up there is image stabilization. But again, if you're new and you can afford to buy a decent lens, get one with good image stabilization. I'm going to tell you about a few of them that I think are some of the best bargains in macro photography today, that have superb vibration control. And we'll talk about that. Build quality is probably not super important to you, but if you're an intrepid outdoors person and you can see yourself doing macro when it's raining or when it's snowing, first of all, get your head examined, but after that, pick one of the lenses that has good weatherproofing, and that almost always means one of the top of the line lenses. However, I'm going to introduce you to a few of the affordable lenses that also have really pretty good weatherproofing. They have seals, and not the kind that balance balls on their noses, rubber seals around the elements, so water can't get in, moisture can't get in. That's important. A lot of us spend time in humid places with these cameras, and they'll get humidity in them too if you're not careful. So getting a weather sealed lens, it may be worth the money for you. Okay, so I almost said in no particular order. They really aren't in any specific order. other than they ended up grouping together. But let's talk about a few of the lenses, and I'll show you some pictures so you know what I'm talking about. I don't think there are going to be many of these that are unfamiliar to anybody, and forgive me if I forget to put the pictures up like I did last time. That's so typical of me. I get so excited. Don't worry, they're not supposed to be up yet. Here's the first one though. Hang on. I'm trying to get my screen ready so that you can't see all the piles and piles of documents everywhere. All right, let me see. So this is a great place to start because it's probably one of my #1 recommended lenses out there. This is the Tamron 90, the DI, or the DI macro VC. I own this lens. I've owned it for many, many years. It's built like a tank. It's got weatherproofing. It's got autofocus, wonderful vibration control, better probably than almost any other lens that I have, with a couple of exceptions, like the new MC105 we'll be talking about. But this is one of the few lenses that, for a fully functional, full-frame macro lens, is relatively affordable. They cost about $690 now. They don't make them anymore. They're coming out with a new version. I think they may already have it out. I haven't seen one yet. But this lens, if you can find it new, is selling for about $700. And that, you'll see, is $300 or $400 less than most premium full-function lenses. I absolutely love this lens. It's got a huge focus throw on it, really smooth, easy to use. Autofocus is very, very responsive, very fast, very accurate. There's not really much bad to say about it. But let's say that's still too rich for your blood. This is one of the best kept secrets in macro photography. As I'm sure many of you know, this is the lens that preceded the one I just showed you. This is the old Tamron 90. It's the it's the DI macro. I don't know what the other letters were. I don't think there were any, but it's also 2.8. It's also for full frame cameras. It's got great autofocus. It's not quite as snappy as the new one, but it's also $350 to $390. You can, I beg your pardon, $300. I checked prices this morning on eBay, and you can get them for less than that. But for a really nice one in a box, about $300, and that's hard to beat. This is a full function macro lens that should please anybody. While we're on Tamron, we'll talk about another lens that I'm not quite as excited about. This is the 60mm lens. It's the one that's $390. This is the f2 DI second version, LD macro, and it's not a bad lens. It's an APS-C lens, so it's specific. It's really the 90 for an APS-C camera, it's almost as good, but it doesn't have the same weather sealing. I put this picture up because this is a really pretty decent deal, getting all of this stuff with it for $390. So not a bad lens at all. It's f2, which is kind of interesting. Not sure that would be something you'd use that much out in the field, but there you go. We're going to talk about another very popular lens that it has a new version of it out, but there's also still an old version of it that's worth looking at. You may have heard speak of this company, Canon. I actually have a few Canon lenses. I don't have this one. This is the ATXI 100mm f2.8 full frame, they call it. And the reason I included it is for a fully functional lens with autofocus, it's really, really cheap. at 400 bucks. That's a very good price for a lens like this. Takina's had a reputation for having some really good optics for the price lenses. Now, I have a couple of wide-angle Takina lenses that I use a lot. In fact, I use them to record video a lot, and they're quite nice. Whether this autofocus works as well as the folks are saying, I don't know. But it has a couple of nice features on it. It has a clickable whatchamacallit thing. Oh, I can't remember exactly what it is. There's something about the focus ring that's different. I haven't had my hands on one of these yet, but what I have used and really did like, though I never actually owned one, I just used it, is the predecessor to this lens, which actually you're probably going to look at it and say, that looks pretty much exactly like the Tamron, old Tamron version. Yeah, very similar. This is the predecessor. It's also 100mm f2.8. Manual focus, autofocus. The focus, I remember what it was. The focus changes with the collar, pulling it back and pushing it forward, which I hate because I do it by accident. But this lens I loved. It's very bright, and you can do anything with it in the field. And the price on this, the old version of this, if you can find one, is about 250 to 300 bucks, which is amazing for a lens of this quality. It really is. You can't talk about affordable macro lenses without talking about the company that really kind of made lenses affordable. The company that's brought us some of the most exciting optics in years, Laowa. And this is the lens that I am currently test driving. This is the 90mm f2.8 CA Dreamer 2x macro, and it's a fantastic lens. It might not be the very best lens for a beginner because it is manual focus. It has a fairly stiff focus ring, but it's made up for by having a nice long focus throw. It's a very nice lens. You need to be comfortable using a manual lens. You need to be comfortable changing your aperture manually on the fly, and it just takes a little bit of practice, but eventually you'll get there. This lens is right in the middle price wise. It's 500 bucks, which is about what the mirrorless manual lenses are going for the premium versions. And I do like this lens. I think that I will buy one of these pretty much as soon as I can afford one. They're a great lens to have in the bag. The other one that I wanted to mention while we were here was I guess it's the predecessor to this lens. By the way, that was a 2x lens, and this is as well. This is the old 65. This was the first Laowa lens I got my hands on and tried, and I did like this lens. It's really, really sharp. I don't know that it's necessarily as sharper, I should say, than the 90mm. Probably not, but it's a nice compact lens. It's a lot heavier than it looks. It's a small thing, but the price on this one is 400 bucks. So again, though, manual lens. I wouldn't feel right talking about Laowa lenses without mentioning their flagship macro lens, which is the 100mm 2.8 manual, 2x magnification. It's basically the same lens as the Sony lens that I tested out this year. They're optically much the same. This is a $500 lens. The basically the full price macro lens that Laowa's gone with, and it's lovely. It's big and it's heavy. I think it would be hard for me to say which I like better, the 100 or the 90, but I might go with the 90 for its more compact size. It doesn't have image stabilization, doesn't have autofocus, but the price is right. I think I had... No, that was all the Laowa lenses I had. I could easily have included the wide-angle macro, the probe lenses. There are many lenses, and one thing that I should have done that didn't do was include their variable the variable magnification. What is it? The 2.5 to 5 times. That only occurred to me as I was making some notes about a new lens in that same category. But I should have mentioned that lens. I loved using that. It really is not a good lens for handheld field photography. It's manual focus. You can change the magnification. It's really something I was much more comfortable using in the studio, and it's not cheap. I think it's about $500. Don't know that for a fact. Don't keep that. Hold that to me. All right. So we're going to jump to another brand that has really been making waves. They've always been making waves, but when Sigma came out with their Art series, and it included a full-size macro lens, I got excited about it. The Art lenses are really, really well made. They're pro-level lenses, and most people who know... Hang on a sec, sorry. There, I did it again. You didn't have to call me, though. Don't call me. Make me nervous. Anyway, the Sigma 105 is really modeled very closely on Nikon's 105, and unfortunately, I guess I would say it's priced almost the same as well. You normally think of the third-party lenses as being a bit more. Well, I guess this is a bit more affordable. It's $800 at the shops these days. It is a full function, all the bells and whistles for mirrorless cameras. 105mm lens. Now, I happen to have the older version of this lens, and I've been testing it and have a review coming out of it on it. Actually, that's the old 105. I can't remember what the designation was. It was the DG. That's right, the DG macro. This lens, and this lens really is very close to the quality of the Nikon 105, the original 105 that I think this was copying. The optics are very similar. It's got everything. It's got stabilization. It's got auto zoom, and I beg your pardon, autofocus. You can even change the range of the focus, so it'll focus a bit snappier. I really like this lens. There's a couple of things about it that are a bit quirky. The manual focus is a little clunky to use. It makes a slight clicking noise. It doesn't feel as smooth as I would like. But given the price of this thing, instead of paying $800 for the new one, this is usually $500 for a full frame. Now, admittedly made for DSLRs, but you can put an adapter on it for a full frame, full function, all the bells and whistles, bright, clear, fast macro lens. Can't go wrong with that one. You really can't. I don't know as much about Canon macro lenses as I probably should, but there are two that are talked about a lot. There's one that is their APS-C lens. That's this one. It's the 60mm 2.8 EFS, and this is a very lightweight, compact, small lens, and it's made for APS-Cs, of course. It's very it's very capable. That I only used it for a few days. I did like it, but it was kind of expensive. It's $480 new, which for an APS-C, well, I'm getting ready to show you a Nikon one that's about the same. So it's probably what you can expect to pay for a lens of this type. But it does have autofocus, and it is fun to use. It is nice and compact, and remember, on an APS-C camera it'll give you plenty of reach. The other one, of course, I'm going to mention this not so much because of its affordability, but because it really is one of the standard lenses that every aspiring Canon shooter wants to add to their collection. And it is a beautiful lens. It's the RF100 f2.8L, and it's $1,000. You know, as we were saying at the beginning, a little bit cheaper than some of the other full frame, full function macro lenses, but it's beautiful. It's a gorgeous lens. This one, of course, is the R version of their 100mm L, and I think that also costs $1,000. I'm not absolutely certain, but yeah, I think they pretty much jumped to the R version about the same price. It looks very similar to that lens cosmetically. Let's talk a little bit about Nikon while we're talking about the big boys. Probably my pick for the best bargain available right now is this lens, which I have long believed when they were selling these things. This is the for DSLRs. This is not a mirrorless lens, but this is the prototypical 105mm lens that has the best vibration control and the best autofocus in a macro lens that I think you can buy. This is still a superb lens, absolutely superb. And for many, many years, I didn't think there was anything could hold a candle to it. And it was, they're selling today from Nikon as renewed lenses. I don't know what that means. Probably they wipe it for you or something. I don't know. But for $550 for a really pro-level, weather-sealed, high-performance lens, this is hard to beat. It really is. There is another lens that is hard to beat. You'll never guess what it is. Oh, maybe you will. Yep, the MC105. This is my favorite macro lens of the modern era. I'm not sure if I can put it in the same category as the 200mm f4, but this lens is beautiful. It is very sharp. It's very fast. It's got every function you can think of, and it's got things that you normally don't think of, like a little television on the top of it. It's a tiny little television that only shows you numbers, but you know, it's still a television. Fantastic image stabilization. This lens is beautiful on any of the Z cameras. It's perfectly balanced, incredibly lightweight. The first time I picked it up, I thought, holy mackerel, this somebody's taken the glass out of this thing. But it's on a par with the old VR105, definitely. It's a bit more expensive. This lens will set you back $1,050. But yeah, certainly when you look at what you're getting, this is affordable because this is another true pro lens. A lens that's not a pro lens, but I'm a pro and I love it and I have it and I probably use it as well. I use it all the time. It's the DX version of their 105. It's the 85. It's not as fast. 3.5 is the minimum aperture, and it's an autofocus lens with incredible vibration reduction technology in it. This is a wonderful lens. I used this for years and years on my D7500 APS-C camera, and I've used it in the studio and in the field. It is surprisingly still expensive. When I bought mine, which was 12 years ago, more than that, it cost me $500. Today, on Adorama, a used one is $500. So that tells you a little bit about the quality of the lens. This is one of the finest unsung heroes of macro lenses. If you can get one of these, I highly recommend it. It will need an adapter, of course, if you're going to use it on a mirrorless camera. But if you have an old DSLR that you have knocking around that you use from time to time, this is a lens that you will love for APS-C. Also worth mentioning, if we're talking APS-C, there is a newer, shorter, slower. No, it's not slower. It's still 2.8. This is the MC50. This is their crop sensor macro lens. Where's the little edge of the picture? There it is. This is the crop sensor version. Well, it disappeared. Don't worry about it. I wouldn't buy one of these. No, I'll get it back. There it is. They're yeah, cute little thing. It's unbelievably light and compact. Takes lovely pictures. And put on one of the modern APS-C mirrorless cameras, hard to beat. I'm a little perplexed by the price. The Nikon is asking $650 for that lens, which seems a lot to me, but what do I know? There's another lens that's hard to mistake. There's nothing that quite looks like it. This is the Olympus. That's a very popular lens. It's designed, of course, for their OM series of cameras. It's a 60mm lens, but it behaves like a full frame. It feels like a full frame on their OM1 camera because of the fact that it's made for a micro four thirds sensor. But it's a very nice, very sharp lens that the people who shoot with that system just swear by this. Absolutely love it. But of course they would have to pretty much love it because I think it's the only one they make. They have a 30mm lens, come to think of it. Yeah, this is their flagship. Very nice lens. Not a bad price when you think about it. $480 new. So yeah, if you're into micro four thirds, yeah, this is the one you want. Let me see. We'll talk about Sony briefly, just to upset my Sony viewers. There are a couple that I would mention. I think everybody is familiar with this gorgeous lens. I think this is one of the prettiest lenses out there. I love the design of it. It reminds me of the MC105 from Nikon. With the big button and everything, but it's really a beautiful lens, very well made, it's weather sealed. It's a pro level lens, and it costs $1,100. There's nothing bad to say about it. If you've seen any of Klaus's pictures, this is his lens, or one of his lenses, though I think he's using a Laowa now. But yeah. These are good lenses. I think Amy shoots with this lens too. It's a completely reliable, if slightly, possibly overpriced a little bit, yeah. But again, if you're a Sony person, there'll be nothing like it. And just like with the Nikon, they put out a little 50mm doodad. What's interesting is this 50mm Sony costs $1,100, just like the big one does. That strikes me as awfully expensive. But yeah, I double checked it. $1,100 for the 50mm Sony. Yeah, it's. I'd say that was not affordable. That ought to maybe have been on the Tuesday list, but it is very sharp, and it's, as you can see, very compact, comfortable lens. And yeah, so there you go. Very good. Let me see what else I've got a few oddities in here that I wanted to mention, and I will, because I have to preface this by saying I don't know the lenses I'm getting ready to tell you about. Well, a couple of exceptions. I've used other versions of these lenses from some of these lesser companies, and they are, in most cases, lesser lenses at significantly lesser prices. But the truth is, some of them may be really, really horrible, and I haven't tried them. So I'm gonna pass on the information that's been given to me by people who tried them, used them, like them, don't like them. And then there are a few brands that I realized I have no lenses in their lines, but that's for a reason. Viltrox, Samyang, Fuji, Mikey, and this new company I've never heard of before called Brighton Star, which is a Chinese company, and the lenses look really dodgy. But I don't know. I've never laid hands on them. If you are a representative of Viltrox, Samyang, Fuji, Brighton Star, or Mikey, and you want me to talk about your lenses, do me a favor and send me one to try out, and I'll talk about them. But otherwise, I don't know what to tell you. One of the couple of the interesting lenses that I'm going to give honorable mentions because they're really interesting too. Let me find the pictures, because that will be the easiest way for me to remember what they are. Yeah, here's one. 7 Artisans. I reviewed a 7 Artisans macro lens, a 40mm lens, years and years ago, and it was okay, but it cost $100. So you weren't going to exactly break the bank if you didn't like it, but it was a cheaply made lens. And this is their new version of that. This is the 60mm f2.8 macro, and it comes in I guess a paper bag. I'm not sure, but this is a little independent company, and the lens I have, still works. It doesn't take very good pictures. It's not super well corrected, it's got some issues. This one looks a little nicer, but beyond that, can't say. The price, however, I think rocks. If you're just dipping your toe in and want to see, you don't want to buy a full featured lens, and you have an APS-C camera, you could get one of these for $150, and you'd have money left over for lunch. So it's probably the cheapest lens that we look at here today. A couple of really interesting lenses. This was the one that I was referring to when I said I forgot to mention the Laowa lens. I know several of you have bought this lens, and you know what? Nobody has got back to me to say what a good lens it is. Is there a reason for that? I have to wonder. This is the Astra Hori 25mm f2.8 macro 2 to 5x. I might as well just give my 2 cents worth about camera lenses that claim to, well, don't claim, they offer you 5 times magnification. I don't think a camera lens is the best way to get 5 times magnification by a long way. It's very, very hard to use in the field. It's very, very hard to use handheld. And honestly, the image quality at higher magnifications with the Laowa lens, and I'm sure with this one though, I haven't had a chance to test it, is just pretty awful, because you're shooting at a relative f-stop of 3 digits, somewhere around 80. So it's major diffraction, softening, and all kinds of geometric issues at the higher magnifications. It's just not the best way to magnify for photography. There are microscope objectives that don't cost much more than that will do a much better job. Yeah, but I've got to be careful because I haven't used this lens. It might be quite good. So if anybody's used it and has a comment, please leave it in the chat, and I'll pass that on to everybody. But haven't had one of these in hand. Several people have offered to lend me one, and I just haven't had the time to test it. But it's $330. Is it $330? I'm missing a sheet of paper because I don't think it's that much. I thought it was 200. It's $250. I found the sheet of paper. $250. So yeah, I suppose that's not too bad. Not too bad. Another thing that I found. Let me show it to you. From I think it's from Astra Hori. Yeah, this lens. Now this is one I'd be very interested to hear about. It's 120 millimeters. What a great focal length, and it's an interesting looking lens. Completely manual. It's the Astra Hori 120 millimeter f2.8, fully manual. $370. It looks almost identical to the 7 Artisans 100 millimeter f2.8. All the way down to having these screw holes in the top. Not exactly sure what they're for, but they look intriguing. So yeah, I don't know. It looks like it would be interesting. I also, by the way, did not include an Irix lens. I have been trying to get that company to let me test drive their 150 millimeter Dragonfly, I think it's called, and they told me they didn't want me touching one of their lenses, so I haven't been able to test it. And this too, I don't know. It looks intriguing. If anybody has one of these or is thinking about getting one, do let me know. $370. It's a lot for an experiment, but let me tell. I'll let you tell me what you think. All right, what else do I have? One of the most fascinating lenses I found out there in the affordable category is this. A broken Astra Hori lens. No, not really. It's a tilt lens, which is not something that you would expect to find in a $330 manual macro lens, but there you have it. It's got the aperture ring out in front, which is really weird, and you can actually tilt this thing by I think it's about 8 degrees either way. That is fantastic for perspective control in with static subjects. You can spread out you can use a larger aperture and get a broader field of focus so that you can get more of your subject in focus. It's a great tool to have. I have that on a couple of wide-angle lenses from Laowa. But also, of course, perspective control lenses from Canon and Nikon will set you back thousands of dollars. If you just wanted to experience macro using a tilt lens, it doesn't have a shift function, but you wouldn't use that as much anyway. But the tilt function, this is the way to do it. $330 is not that big an investment to try something that unusual. And I think that is everything. I don't think there are any. Let me just double check my pictures here to make sure I haven't. No, there is one more. You remember, there's another company that I looked at. It's not. I confuse 7 Artisans with TT Artisan. In fact, it might have been TT Artisan, whose other lens I tested those years ago. But see how this looks pretty much the same as that Astra Hori I was showing you? Yeah, this is the TT Artisan 100mm f2.8, fully manual. Let me see. It's also, by the way, 2 times magnification. So it's a 2x lens, f2.8 all the way up to like f22. How much do you think that one costs? Correct, $339. So you get a little piece of plastic with it for free, so that should make your mind up right there. Don't know about this lens, but you can see that the spread is not that, well, I guess it is pretty significant now as I think about it, between 1100 and 400 is, yeah, that's $700. So what do you think? Are you intrigued, or is that pretty much, yep, that's what the macro lens market's always looked like? It is. It's exactly the way it's always looked. You get what you pay for, and if you don't want to buy a lot of them, you should pay for something good the first time. That was profound. I'm looking at the other screen because I'm trying to find the questions, if there are any. So I know that Anita had a question. Anita, what is your question? I have to get to it because we're running out of time. I'm still going through lenses though. Only a couple left. There's got to be a better way than opening them all separately. Alright, let me see. Good grief, I talked about a lot of lenses. Alright. I know you can't see the lens. You're not supposed to be seeing the lenses, by the way. If somebody's texting me to say, we can't see those lenses you're going through. There, the questions. From Anita, what do I have to change to my setup? Don't know. Oh, I see you had previous questions. Oh, these are long questions. Let me see. What time is it? Oh, we've got 6 minutes. No problem. All right, let's go. I bought the Amscope 4, the 160.17 achromatic microscope objective. Fantastic, fantastic objective. You need to place it on 150 millimeters of extension. Not the 160 it says on the objective, because that includes an eyepiece that you won't be using. So between your sensor and the objective, 150 millimeters. It's very bright, very sharp. I love that lens. Okay. When Anita, you don't know this, but when my phone keeps going off during a live stream, it's usually somebody calling to tell me my volume got turned off, or I'm not showing the right screen or something, but it was not that. I don't know what it was. Somebody trying to sell me something. Okay, so let me see. The question goes on. I'm using a Leitz Wetzlar 4.0 12 non-plan microscope objective, 170 old second-hand objective on a Canon RF 2.8L macro lens. Okay. Is that an infinity objective you're using? I'd need to look that up, but I'm pretty no, you're saying it's a 170. All right, so you don't need to be using that objective on a lens at all. That objective is a finite objective. It's made to be used just with separation. It doesn't need a relay lens, and that macro lens behind it is not really going to work in that setup. I'm going to turn that off. Yes, I am. Now that means that from now on, if anybody needs to get in touch with me for any reason, they won't be able to ever, because I'll forget to turn it back on again. All right, so that old Leitz Wetzlar 4, yeah, that should work fine on 160 millimeters of extension. But I don't know. I've never used that one. It would be worth trying. Camera's a Canon EOS RP full frame mirrorless. Lens is set to manual focus. Flange distance of the RP is 20. Okay. The macro lens is 148 millimeter tube length. Well, the macro lens doesn't really function as a tube in this case. If you wanted 140 millimeters of length, you have to understand the difference between a finite and an infinite objective is the key here. Most of the older objectives and most of the cheap objectives or cheaper objectives that you'll get from the used market, and these Nikon 4Xs, for example, are lovely little lenses. I meant Amscope. They're lovely little lenses, but they're made to be used without relay lenses. Infinity corrected objectives are newer. They're almost always much more expensive. And really the only advantage to them, they do need a relay lens, but they allow you to vary the distance between the objective and the microscope, so you have room to put other things in, like filters and mirrors and other things you use in microscopy that we don't use a lot in photography. Those lenses, those objectives, do require a relay lens, and that relay lens will be predicated by the relay lens that objective would normally use were it in a microscope. For example, Mitutoyo objectives require a 200mm lens to be used at their full magnification. That is not the same with other brands that use a relay lens of a different focal length. You can use a relay lens of a different focal length in some cases, but that's a different topic for another time. So if you have an infinity corrected objective, to use it, you need to really find out for that brand of lens, those microscopes that it's made for, what is their focal length. Nikon's also 200, which makes it easy. Nikon objectives and Mitutoyo use the same 200mm focal length tube lens, and the kind of tube lenses I think you'd like more than trying to use a macro lens, though some macro lenses work really well. If you have a 200mm f4 Nikon macro lens, that is a premium tube lens, but usually you're better off just buying a Raynox, which has a focal length of close to 200mm, and it works great as a relay lens with an infinity corrected microscope objective. I know I turned this off. I turned it off again. So does that help? Let me see. So the camera you're using doesn't really make any difference. The image circle from that smaller objective is going to be plenty to form an image on a full frame camera. You may get some vignetting a little bit, but that's common when you're using microscope objectives. Let me see. Your last question was, theoretically I should add 2mm to each 170mm optical tube length, and for the Amscope my camera setup is too long. Yes, your camera, your setup for the Amscope objective is too long. You know how it has the little stripes on it, that the objective has those little horizontal lines? Where those lines end is where the first optical, or where the last optical element ends. So if you look at the outside of the objective, you'll see what I'm talking about. The horizontal lines, where they end close to the camera, is where you measure from. Your distance from that line to the line of your sensor should be 150mm, or given your camera has a flange focal distance of 20mm, you can measure from the flange of the camera to the back of the objective should be 130mm, 130. If you get that, you're all set. The easiest way to do that is with a set of bellows. That's what I tell most people to do. That way you're not fiddling around with tubes. Or you could use tubes and a helicoid, which will change the length of the tubes, but you're better off just buying an old set of bellows. That you can get them for next to nothing these days, and they'll last forever. Yeah, 130mm is going to be the sweet spot for that objective. As for the 170 optical tube length for the second objective, the Wetzlar 4, that's 170, so 160, and yeah, just get rid of the Canon. If maybe you're not saying that you're using the Canon as a relay lens. You shouldn't be anyway. It's 100 millimeters, and that's not long enough. So if you're just asking about the tube length, it's just the same. It's the length on the objective minus 10 millimeters. The 10 millimeters is the length of the eyepiece, and we can remove that from the equation. So 160 for the lights, Wetzlar, 150 for the AM scope, and you should be set. So that's all you have to change on your setup, and yeah, we're glad you're here. Any questions, get in touch. The best thing you can do for your macro photography, other than coming here and talking to my friends out there, is go over to Discord. That's where these folks hang out, and they'll help you. They help everybody. They even help me. So, okay, that's it. I think you're probably getting good advice from folks out there in the chat as well. Wow, there's a lot of good, interesting comments here. I'm going to read through all of this, and yeah, I'll read through all of this when I get to where I'm going this afternoon. But I've got to leave right now because it's 3:04. That means I'll be 4 minutes late. I want to read through this, and what I'll do is on Tuesday when I come back, I will address these questions that have come up, because it looks like a lot of interesting and fascinating questions and comments. Everybody, welcome Anita, welcome Thomas, welcome anybody else who's new. Chas, I'm not familiar. I don't recognize your name. If you're new, Chas Gordon, welcome. I hope you come back again. And oh, Gabrielez, another new person, I believe. Fantastic. I'm so happy to see new folks. If you're new, this is your first time, please come back. I'm usually more organized than this. No, I'm not. I'm never organized. So have a great weekend. Everybody stay safe and be well. We had 236 views today. That's more than usual. Isn't that nice? All right. Yeah, sorry about the ding-dong going off during that. That was getting irritating even for me, and I normally just ignore it. Have a great weekend. Stay safe. See you on Tuesday. No, see you on Saturday at After Stack, when we're going to do things, After Stack things. And I'll see you then when I get back from Wisconsin. Take care, everybody.